I'm really big on the idea of how do we mature as a people, and I still think that church provides the best context for us to become better human beings. And by better, I mean like more Christ-like, that we embody an alternative way of living with generosity and kindness in a world marked with whatever it marked with.
Because I think our natural inclination is to go towards, but God is perfect. But God is in control. But God is.
Therefore, it's like a sort of standard.
So you come with their questions, their issues, and everything, but then there's a wall of God is in control. So now that limits your lament, that limits your mourning, that limits your all of those things.
Even your joy.
Even your joy. But that there's a place that I can go, and that space will be held long enough for me to meet Christ, or to meet. If I'm not meeting him in my house, or he's not here, or for whatever reason there's a disconnect, I think it's comforting to me to know that there's a place I can walk into, and hopefully, and whenever I do, the doors will be open, and they will hold that space long enough for me to come and encounter Christ again. That for me is a really beautiful understanding of what the church is and what the church
is. There's a growth that will not going to happen unless we're in a particular community. And then there is a growth that is never going to happen absence of that energizing, sustaining life force of Christ. That's why I do church. At which point I say, you're welcome to join a village church.
In
Kikuyu. Perfect church. Where we do life together and we are vulnerable with one another.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the ReImagined podcast. Thank you for joining us today. We are ReImagining Church. My name is Agnes Olo and
Vic Munala
and Nashwa Rugoro.
Thank you for joining us. We are going to start as usual by this quote by Eugene H. Peterson on church, which says this: "A church can never be reduced to a place where goods and services are exchanged. It must never be a place where a person is labeled. It can never be a place where gossip is perpetuated. Before anything else, it is a place where a person is named and greeted, whether implicitly or explicitly, in Jesus' name. A place where dignity is conferred." Discuss.
Eugene Peters. I think one of the moments, just thinking about that statement on where goods and services are exchanged, one of the angriest moments of Jesus was him throwing people out of church because they were selling goods and services in church, which it's just a fascinating quote to think at it at that level. But even now when you think about church, you can see some elements of we come here to receive. So there's this one person who has things to give, blessings, the word, worship or whatever. So we are here to receive. And then we go back to our non-church places, our homes, our workplaces, and all of that. So this one place is holy. And then now the other places,
where you take your holiness to.
You take your holiness to, which it really is interesting, because if you are to go by this quote, that church is where dignity is conferred, then I'm thinking that it doesn't have to be at a particular place for it to be conferred. Dignity can be conferred anywhere. So anywhere, everywhere is church. So it just depends on how you look at it and how you view it. And
Thank you for expanding on your No, because me the whole time as a pastor in the house, I'm just wondering what he has in mind for a church. You know what I mean? It's like I mean, I get it. It can never be the place where goods and services are exchanged. I mean, you say that could be very well be a definition of a church. You know, must never be a place where a person is labeled. I think.
Oh, we like labeling.
Oh, that's all we do.
It's like
That's all we do.
the very foundation of our gathered
Yes.
people. You
Yeah.
know, where gossip is perpetuated. I think churches, we are just the best at gossiping. You know,
In terms of prayer items.
But rare
really,
items.
you know what I mean?
You don't
Yeah,
want us
that's
to
what-
pray for each other.
yeah, but in a very real sense, like, yeah, you know, and I think we trivialize gossip, and I think it's whatever destructive. But also, like, what it says in a church is, right, a place where a person is named and greeted, you know, just like that naming and greeting, just in themselves have, like, I don't know, it's a weird thing. Or maybe what we call naming is what what he calls labeling is what we call naming. You know, just naming you as a sinner, you know, kind of a thing, in need of Jesus Christ. But this place for a place where dignity is conferred, and still again, like generally from this, I just go back to like which church do you have in mind? You know, 'cause like, it's not to say that my experience of churches has been like necessarily negative or whatever, but I'm just saying that's not even like the beginning place. You know, I don't think that the first thing we're thinking is how can we confer dignity on the people who come, like on a Sunday. You know, it's how it's all couched in all sorts of different things, but still, even in the executing of those things, it can very well end up being an undignifying thing. Then very quickly, you know, descends to a labeling and all these things, which then, before you know it, becomes a very place of heart, you know, for all sorts of reasons. So I'd say, like, I see what Eugene Peterson is saying. I'm just like, I don't know how practical it is. Like, it's a description of heaven. You know?
We're on earth.
Look up on earth,
You have too much faith in us.
Yeah. But also, like, in the sense that more and more what I see, especially in our sort of, let's just call them Kenyan churches, like it's a very, I guess that's what would work to the degree that you are thinking of it in an upward sort of way. So like then we gather to dignify the man of God. You know what I mean? From all the way we serve them, him and his wife and whatever, to the seats that they are sitting, the special seats, the special tables. Like you say, the Father, we give them endless time to stand on this elevated place and talk to us and tell us things, you know. So in a sense, like it's a place where a pastor is named and greeted
in Jesus' name.
It's a place where he's conferred dignity, you know what I mean? Like, this is my home kind of a thing.
Okay.
But so it's sort of like it's that reversal of reality where, like, you know, and it's really fascinating because, like, even like this very basic stories, like we have like churches, you know, like a church is identified by pastor so and so. You know what I mean? It's not it's church, exactly. Yes, and we make fun about the signage that has the husband and the wife on the poster.
We are still waiting for yours.
You know? Yeah, some people are working on a photo shoot, you know. But in a very real sense, like we take those in as if they're accepted norms, but then in a sense it's like subverting this place to be a place where it's like sort of exists for this place, for this person or this couple to be named and known and all those different things. Whereas then all of us, the rest of us congregant, who I guess is what Eugene Peterson means by people, like literally, like we just literally show up as consumers. We show up to receive. This is a nice one, but more like we show up to consume whatever the honored, dignified one is bringing down on us, you know. And for a small price of an offering or tithe, whatever, it seems to work, you know.
It's not a small price considering they continue asking for more.
It's never once.
No, if you give a lot of it, that's on you, isn't it? You never sort of.
You need to stagger your.
It's like
You need to be very smart. Okay, yeah, you raise quite interesting thoughts. Because then I'm thinking about it from a person who has attended church as a congregant, a person who has worked in church, and a person who has worked with the ones who we are conferring dignity to. And
conveniently excusing yourself from that.
I don't know. I don't feel like I have not felt like you people are not dignifying me.
That's your understanding of dignity that is. But
I don't feel like dignity is being conferred to. But anyway, no, but then it raises the question of like who dignity is being conferred to as people who have been an active part of a church from in different capacities, as the workers, as the leaders, as the congregants. We know or have this understanding that it takes so much work to achieve this thing that Eugene Peterson is defining, a place where labeling is not happening, a place where gossip is not perpetuated. It requires some form of intentionality. You know, the weird thing about church is someone has to think about what is happening. Like church doesn't, like for most people, church just happens. You show up and there's lights and there's worship and there's someone giving a sermon. But for this place that forms people so deeply, there's a group of people who have to think about these little aspects of how do we make this work? How do we make this work? And so it's almost like these people then bear the responsibility to make this church or to model this church after this description of a place where people can be dignified. But then the question that has arose out of that for me is that then these people who are the workers at church, then who dignifies them? Like who when you're working when you are the laborer and you're the one creating a space for people to step into and become and be dignified, who is dignifying you? Is it a reciprocal? Because then I don't see that then churches are setting people up, the congregants up, to dignify the workers. Like in a real, because as a congregant I'm not thinking about how to dignify this person. And so it's easy to lose that bit quite easily. I guess my thought was there's so much that goes into making a church run on a day-to-day or on a Sunday-to-Sunday basis, that then to become a church where truly everybody is dignified requires a level of intentionality. I don't know whether it should come from the leadership. I guess it should come from the leadership all the way trickling down to the workers, to the congregants.
No, but also I think like this alone could be a podcast in and of itself. Because I think then even like with Eugene Peterson, it's like still this question of, because even what you're describing is a particular church model, right? Like, which especially for those of us inhabiting urban spaces, that's just a model we have in mind, right? But that model, it's a model of our church. You know what I mean? And therefore that model hasn't those unique challenges built into them. And all sort of models will have basic challenges built into them. But because I think with what Eugene Peterson is saying also carries for me some remnants of scriptures of Paul talking about the church as like a body. You know what I mean? So I think like what then you are saying, like within a body, it's everybody is participating. It's a partnership for participation. Where there is dignifying and naming and all these different things. So that then, like from workers to all these different people, it's still a way of, it's almost like you could very well be describing like a supermarket. You know what I mean? It's like you have the branch manager, and then you have these different workers, and you have the customers who come and go kind of a thing. And that may sound like such an accurate description of a church, but in a sense, in its functioning, it can carry those kind of ideas. So that then someone gets lost there in the process of dignity, But I think for this to work, then it's a bit of what you're saying. Like it's the expectation that we are all participating in this thing, and whatever this thing is that is a church, it cannot be a Sunday service gathering. And I think that we very quickly tempted to equate a Sunday service gathering into a church. But I think that's why it's called a service. No, it should carry. That service in itself can be very abusive in all sorts of ways, but it should carry, but it should be the doorway to say this exists this exists either as a part of a church community, or this exists to facilitate the church community, you know what I mean? But then, let's be honest, because we live in this space, which is to say that for a lot of churches, Sunday is their church.
Yes.
Because I was about to this just pushing that Sunday is the church and moving the conversation from church as a location and in terms of participation. I think we love that word so much because it carries such a heaviness to it in terms of we are doing this together. So just pushing the conversation, maybe this conferring of dignity again is not happening on a Sunday in a 2-hour, or some people go for the whole day in church. It's not happening there. I think if we move the conversation to this conferring of dignity, it's happening everywhere. Then the participation is more natural. The participation is more fulfilling, I guess, because I feel like we've given too much power to the physical space of the church. That in most churches, our goodness is measured by the frequency of attendance. And how the church decides to show up for
it's
you.
not?
I'm just here like taking notes. What did I say?
And how the church decides to show up for you when the church needs to show up for you is determined by how frequently you showed up or how frequently you participated within those 4 walls. So it almost makes it feel like all the things that you do by the side are not church. You're raising your kids well in your homes. We need to, we can say that with the heaviness of this is church. How you lead the different employees at your workplace, you dignify them and all of that. We can say that this is church, and all the different places that we spend most of our times in, as opposed to this weekend where we come all showered, all prepped up for this particular moment.
I mean, that raises, so like moving this conversation forward into now what are, because you are all defining church as all these different things. I'm like,
answering this question in our head.
So what is church? What is church? Because now you're raising the question of whether it's a place that people go to, or that church is a thing that you do, or it's a state. I don't know. Like, what do you understand church to be?
I don't know.
What have you been saying?
You people are assuming we already know what church is, and you've already said it's not the place we go. So help us.
I think like, even like the framing of the question, what is the church? I would rather say what is my understanding.
What is your understanding of the church?
As compared to the definitions, like it's a whole thing.
But I have like the answers.
You have the answers. You have Googled this.
No. I think when you're part of this ecosystem.
Are they like biologically astute and biblically grounded?
It's a hospital for
a hospital for the sick.
It's a well for
the thirsty.
It's all those.
Okay,
what does that mean?
They say it's a hospital for the sick and not a what? That's not complete. I forget what it is.
Let's see, church people.
Yes.
No, I think like generally is one actively involved in catalyzing something like this. I still go back to this idea of a body, like this idea of a living organism, as it were. A living it's like
cut. Continue.
No, it's like even if I continue with that idea. That is for blooper. But the idea of this idea of a living body, which is like it still carries that idea of an evolving participatory thing, and it's found in all those things, But also love. I don't forget who it is. Maybe it's something to do with Peterson, whose understanding of church is church is it's like it's like an alternative society, something to the degree of bearing witness and manifesting the kingdom of God on earth, meaning that we are called to be a peculiar group of people, in a sense, who are working out and living a different lifestyle, smack in the midst of how everybody else is living, manifesting something different from what everybody else is living. Almost like if you want to know God, you can literally look at a church and say, oh, look at them. Look at how they love one another. Look at how they serve one another. Look at, but not only they are one another in one another, but also look at how then they show up into community. You know, which I think lines up with what you're saying. That's not something that it's whatever church is, because it's rooted in this followership of Christ. You know, it still has to be a bearing witness of Christ at work on earth. You know, so that's what I mean. So then for me, it's like Christ representative on the ground. You know, and how then Christ representative, however he chooses to, one of the ways he chooses to do that is like still a community group of people. You know, so yes, it's a part of what Vic you're saying, like you at home parenting your children is can be an expression of church. And still there's a place where Christ says, like, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name. Right? So then that for me is like the very basic understanding of what a church is. Wherever 2 or 3 are gathered. So it's always this sense, and I think that's fascinating to me, that it's not wherever you, I mean, of course it's impossible for you to gather by yourself, right? But there's a sense in which like 2 or 3, but then you think about 2 or 3, and then inevitably makes the thing very, very complex and messy, you know. So I still think, even as I have like this very cool understanding of the church as a body, I also make room for wherever 2 or 3 people are gathered. It just gets messy, you know. I mean, it was going so well between me and Jesus until he showed up.
The other people came, and then now it's like complicated.
I have to know boundaries and all these different things, you know. So then, in sense, I think that church is just bound to be messy. Like whatever that body of Christ looks like, it's a messy place. And I think then therefore that we settle for this Sunday service thing, because I think there's a modicum of control. Even at first we show up all dressed up and nice and smiling, you know.
Sunday best.
That comes from somewhere, you know. And I think therefore it can be very easy to then exclude the messiness of us, which happens between Monday to Saturday. You know what I mean? And also
it also happens on Sunday.
If you're going back to our different problems, you know.
You step into service with your holiness.
Exactly. So I think like those 2 things contained in my head. Like you're an alternative community manifesting a different sort of kingdom,
but also
of grace and love. But then you're doing that in a sort of messy way. Messy doesn't have to be hurtful. It can be, but it doesn't have to be hurtful.
Messy is human.
Messy is human, you know. Because then I think we use that term almost to excuse abuse and hurt and all these kind of things. Just because your message that isn't a license that it should be hurtful. You know? So I think I make room for a messy church. I guess I have very little room for a hurting church, a place where we hurt one another.
Would someone like still say that is part of the mess? Because then we also have those conversations around like what do we do with when the mess becomes hurtful? Because I don't think like the mess is separate. You can't. It will hurt someone. It will hurt people, and we've seen a mass exodus from church, and the cause is this term church hurt that is now a big thing. But before I go there, let me come back to you. Let me cover kidogo. So there's a tension between the church as a place that gives an alternative kingdom. It's this thing that Jesus kept saying, I'm bringing forth a new kingdom, and you're going to live and see it, right? Versus, again, this kingdom that's new is made up of these people, these flawed, messy people, and it's always a tension. So much so that the people in the kingdom do not want to see the mess. The people outside of the kingdom see only the mess. Exactly. So it's like, how do we bring these 2 truths together? Because I think when we are able to bring that is when we are able to dignify each other. When we are able to hold this idea that we are both saints and sinners. Like this kingdom is not made of like only the saints or whatever. It's not, we don't have to make a choice about who we become, because inherently, because we are human, we are going to come into this space with all our faults and all our flaws and all of that, while at the same time we are living into a new reality. We are living into an alternative way of life, of being, of community. And so, yeah, I think for me, it's that holding these two things as true. So that our lives are not constantly being appended by some story in church. It's like, oh my God, like how could they? How could they? Although another thought that I have is that we've also set ourselves up to be the victim of our messes, because we also are very quick to claim morality on ourselves and to be the custodians and gatekeepers of morality. And anyway, I don't know what thoughts you guys have around the church as a place that almost as a political body, like a body that can stand and say this is what we are standing for and this is what we are not standing for, and how that sets us up for all man. I feel like it's like a weak link. It's exposing us. It's exposing.
We're setting ourselves up for what we can't even.
Because we can't. We truly can't, and it is happening over and over again. But it doesn't seem like we go back and say, oh, maybe we need to rethink what a church should be. Every time it's almost like we double down on, but this is what we believe. It's like that dissonance. We are unable to handle it or to steward it. I don't know. Thoughts?
It's
Vic just has the answers for this. This is a kind of thing it's like credit.
Oh goodness. At church, ideally, there's these stories of community. Even when you think about how Paul shaped the churches he was planting, it was these people who live in this particular space experiencing life together. And I think at best, at church, when you sit around each other, it's a mirror where you are reflecting Christ unto you. So with all the mess that you are, with all the beauty that you are, all of those are within you, and we need to be constantly reminded of that. We need to be constantly reminded of Christ and all of that. So ideally, that should be church. What happens within that setup, because we are human and we are complicated in that.
Why is there a church heart? Because why are we not saying supermarket heart, market heart, home heart, family heart? Like, we are being hurt everywhere, but why is there specifically just
hurt people?
There is a level of expectation within the church setup of these people are here for you. You got there with that understanding. Even if that is not true for this particular church or not, we step into those spaces with that understanding that these people are there for you. So the moment, it's easier to notice when they are not there for you. It's easier to notice when they label you. It's easier to notice when they misname you. When you go to work in a supermarket, you don't have expectations of the manager. In fact, you expect the manager to be toxic. So you see, so the pastor is being held to a different standard as opposed to this other person, because there is a way the pastor should be that I don't think has been communicated, but that's just our understanding of it. So whatever small, not minimizing people's hearts, but however, how small it might be or how big it will always be magnified within the church setup as compared to the other places. Yes, and it is true, there are toxic people within the church walls.
But the church is set up for toxicity. Like, it's not like we are doing work to...
It is.
It is.
No,
because
also,
any place that puts unrealistic expectation on the community as a whole. Because I think for me the tension is, yes, I think that there should be a level of whatever accountability is, and especially on the leaders of the church, because then they are the ones with the power. Like they're the ones on the place of privilege. And if you're privileged, if what you say becomes truth, as because of your position, then you also can't stand and say, oh, but I don't know what, like you also can't be this flimsy person. So there's that idea that I think the people who lead communities of faith need to be held to a certain level of, accountability, because then without the accountability, then all sorts of messes have been happening. But at the same time, I think how we set up this, we are setting up this community for failure because we are putting these unrealistic expectations on a whole group of people. Like all of us need to walk in and become one thing. Of course, there'll be people that stick out, and we quickly, hammer those people down and back into, but this is how we are, but this is how we are. Because the church is not the space, we've not set up the churches to be places where, our uniqueness, our individuality, that's not celebrated. It's you come in and become, see, you remember what we were talking about, community? Come and see what we are doing and be that. And you step into a church, you talk differently. And we say it is now Jesus. I don't know. Anyway,
No, but I hear what you're saying. I mean, these are like profound questions, but I don't even think we should just like say we are reimagining church.
Are we reimagining?
We are understanding church for a start. No, because I think like what you're saying, I think like there's a space to be said about church as a scapegoat for society, right? Which is like the you know what I mean? Like in the Old Testament, they'll have this sheep that they will put all their problems on and they will release it to whoever. But on a bigger scale, I think even that idea that the church leaders should bear more responsibility, or that Christians should bear more responsibility. I mean, it's a misunderstanding, because what we call more is basically we are asking them to be human. You know what I mean? Human is not less than. To ask people. I mean, it shocks me that we say, of course, church people need to be people of integrity. Okay, and where exactly? No, but also as compared to which people?
Yeah,
right?
Which other people
don't want our doctors to be people of integrity? Don't we want our politicians to be people of integrity? Oh, church people, at least it should be the place where we don't abuse one another. I mean, as compared to where? Like, so are we okay with home being a place of abuse? And, you know what I mean? There's a sense in which we are doing all these things to one another. So we are expecting less humanity and dignity in all these other places, while at the same time demanding it in this one place, you know? So then we are all like with microphone, oh my God, did you hear what that guy did? Oh, what that guy did is what is happening in your corporate space on a daily basis. You just have learned to expect less of these people, you know? So like, church people, even when we say it, I mean, I have problems saying like that's a higher standard we're expecting of it, because it's not higher. It's human. It's asking you
want it to be decent.
I'm actually like, please don't steal. Please do not abuse women. I mean, for heaven's sake, do not abuse young boys. Like, I don't get why we are saying that is expecting much.
That's a high standard.
No, it's not. So there's a sense in which we scapegoat this thing with church because we just don't want to demand the same of ourselves as a society. You know what I mean?
Oh,
so
that's profound.
So in that sense, I'm like, as you guys are talking, I'm just thinking like actually no one asks more of church. It's simply asking of church what we should be asking
to be of
You
everybody.
know what I mean?
But it's easy to label the church as or to expect.
Exactly. You know, so that's like. So that's one of the bigger points. And before you run on that, let me just touch on what the other thing. Don't lose that though, because also I think what Agi said is the church doesn't make it easy on itself, because I think when you mention the idea of political power, because the church in some sense also gets its power from living into this scapegoating. You know what I mean? From living into this idea that we are separate from you guys. Like we are your moral upending kind of a people, you know what I mean? Which then is how we end up with what's our stand on this and everything else, you know? And then people look at us and say, I mean, like, it's nice that you guys are taking a stand on that, but what about that?
Everything else.
You know what I mean? So then we have, to the degree, like, so when we say church and it's like its power and like at the political arena now, we're simply saying it's church, like church in general, I think is supposed to be just a community in the community. It gets its power from the people living a particular kind of way. But then when we harness that power to be a voice of a particular thing in the society, in the whatever, let's support this political person over that, whatever. When we are, whatever that power we are leveraging, because it's not our economy or whatever it is, it becomes us claiming what the society demands of us, and then we claim it and use it as a cause for power, you know, which then of course is still living into that problem, which is, you're not going to, you cannot tell me that in out of a country of like, I don't know, however 50 million people, that if we were to say, I mean, whatever, 85% Christian, we say,
like 40 million or something.
like almost like those are the people we expect to have a higher level of living, you know, I'm like, no, we all should be aspire, and I think that was at the heart of what the new kingdom of Christ is about. That it's not just a set group of people, it's about all of us inviting one another to live into an alternative way of being in a world marked by sin and corruption and death and all these kind of things. You know what I mean? But Vic, you had a powerful point.
No, you've answered it. It was a question of so how did the church get itself there, where it is, where it's held on this pedestal? Because I don't know, I think it enjoys the limelight.
Exactly.
Always. The church is a celebrity.
The limelight of
like a teenage celebrity.
Yes, so it finds itself there, and then it wants to maintain a certain image, and in the wanting to maintain this image, now that's where they have the pressure to hide a lot of the messiness that happens within those walls. And then when they come out, we are like, oh my goodness.
No, but also how much then effort, and that's like a very powerful point, because I'm like, part of what Agi is also saying, because we're not made of, the church doesn't constitute of like perfect people. I mean, I think we say that, I don't think we mean it, you know, because then within the church space, it's also, we are the ones also with the gospel of forgiveness, right? Which then to be that if I step on your foot like on Sunday, we work out a forgiveness mechanism kind of a thing, right? But then what we quickly switch to, because it's protectionism. And I don't think that Jesus had an idea of church as a community where protection overrides who we actually are. So then you get, you know, like whether it's a church with like all these reviews and all these abuse stories that come out of it, you know, they were all just intentionally covered, you know, financial, physical, sexual abuse, all these things. They were covered because we had to live into the brand. And yet I'm fascinated that the many letters that Paul writes to churches, which constitutes a big chunk of our New Testament, but a lot of it is literally just Paul guiding these people in the particular message they have found themselves in. Right? So it's like it is almost like expected that they will be men, you know? But then I think to the degree that then we become very quick at covering, but then we are very quick at covering because that's how we are leveraging our power. Because, our sacred Pastor Nash, if the news was to come out that he abuses girls, oh my God, what becomes of this church, you know? And then before you know it, then you have this entire toxic cloak and dagger thing. And then everybody else within the same community looks at that thing and just says, wow, aren't you guys deluded? You're like, that guy abuses you every single Sunday. And you guys come back to that every single Sunday. And no amount of pastoring Jesus on that and what Jesus did on the cross takes away from the Father. Whatever church is, as a community, like we said the other time, like no community exists as a brand image protection thing. Like any community exists by facing its demons when the demons pop up, but also by daily working out its purposes to be a healthier place than it was. I guess the word healthy in this case would use to be a godly place than it was yesterday. You know, so I think the last thing I would add to that is that like church is a place of broken, messed up people, where God is at work making each of those individuals into more Christ-like people. So that then, when we say that, even when it says a hospital place for the sick, it's not. We frame that sometimes almost to say, right, like hospitals' core mandate is to admit sick people. Like hospitals' core mandate is to facilitate healing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they do that, yeah. Like we almost like coming to hospital should be the last option. We can do community health. We can talk about preventive. You know what I mean? So all that to say, it's a mess. What is that tension?
I think that's true. I think the other thing that has come to my mind with that was like, I don't know when this became a thing, but this idea that every time someone does something, that then would become like a misrepresentation of us, it's also a misrepresentation of God. That also our core mandate is to protect God and to represent Him in the best possible light. And I've always wondered, like, if that is, it's almost like that thing for a parent and a child. Like, whenever a child's core duty is to make sure the parent appears a certain way, you see how quickly that child disintegrates. Because for how long am I going to be the nice, proper child who can't speak up, who can't make a mistake? Because the moment you make a mistake, of course you're misrepresenting me. Now we are going to fight. Now it's always war, right?
And no one looks at that and says, wow, that is a parent. Right? Sometimes you look at that and say, who is the parent?
Who is the parent?
You know what I mean? Which I guess sometimes in the way we are protecting God, like, or we're working, it's like wait, it's God. Like, when did the people of God become God?
Yeah.
In a very good sense.
Yeah, it's like now we are God, genuinely, because it's like it's almost like we live with this anxiety of, oh my God, if anyone sees the church as anything less than perfect, then God becomes not God anymore. Like now God is also affected. Yeah, now God is actually affected.
God's character is in question.
God's character is in question. The church itself is in question. But like whenever we live in this constant threat of God's character being in question, and it feels like it's our primary role and responsibility to ensure that God is seen in the best possible light. And I don't know. I just think that there has to be a better way of framing, of understanding even what that means. Like, of course, this is a new kingdom. Of course, we are stepping into and living into this new kingdom. But what does that do to our people when it feels like me making a mistake is bringing shame to God's name?
No, actually, it's not God, it's God's name.
It's to God's name that's pure and holy and perfect.
And I don't know whether part of the reason could be that we are afraid of lamenting. Because there's whole books in the Bible where people are actually telling God off. And just like, so maybe instead of trying to protect God, because the church is being seen in a certain way, therefore God's character is in a certain way, maybe we just also need to learn to lament and name these things in that way. This has happened within our community. We don't know what to do with it. Let's cry. Let's do all of those. Let's work it out instead of but God is. Because I think our natural inclination is to go towards, but God is perfect. But God is in control. But God is.
Therefore, it's like a sort of standard that you have to live into.
So you come with their questions, their issues, and with your everything, but then there's a wall of God is in control. So now that limits your lament, that limits your mourning, that limits your all of those things.
Even your joy.
Even your joy.
Even your joy. So you just maybe.
Have you been to communities where it's just like, which kingdom is this? Like, what is this? And why is everybody like this? Why is everybody looking? Where's the life? Where's this life that we are told that Jesus came that we may have life and have it more abundantly? Like, it feels like there's no life. Because there's a serious. Let me add this. Like, I have such a big problem with how seriously we take Christianity is. If I'm supposed to live my daily life, and working out my salvation on a daily basis, I don't know that it's supposed to be too serious, to be honest. Like,
But also as a human being, living in a broken world. Almost like baked in that is like an expectation that you fail. But then as soon as you fail, that's like strike one, whatever it is, right? Yeah. And also I was going to going to add to Vic's idea of like ramen. I mean, I don't even know why we run away from that. Just because I think as a pastor, I sit down and I think like Jesus, like dies on the cross, whatever, like even make it really dramatic. God, the one who created universe, heaven and earth, whatever. For whatever reason, when it came time to say, this is how my kingdom gets started, you know, we wait for its fullness kind of a thing. And how it gets started is to be by entrusting these people. Like people, you know what I mean? I'm like, that should like cause serious humility in all of us. Like, we are people. And it doesn't say, I'll make you into a particular kind of a person,
special,
worthy of carrying my thing. It just simply says people. And you start, like, you open the doors of even to church and say, anyone is welcome here. And like, wait, what do you mean? And now, when everybody is welcome, we form a body of Christ. And like, for we, like CC, we are a body of Christ, you know? So that like baked within that, just by virtue of our limitation and all those different things should like be a place of. Baked within this is a continuous ongoing remnant, not even on a bigger scale, but like on very mundane level, because this coming Sunday, in a couple of days, right, we'll have a Sunday gathering. And we're all going to gather there. I'm like, from broken marriages and all that. And all of us are going to gather, and Jesus looks at that and says, they are gathered in my name, there I am in their midst. Oh, but then let's expand that a little bit further to say, that is actually my body in that particular place. And so, what? So I think that's true, but I think where also it gets complicated, which I think I wanted to add, is that I think we cannot talk of church, at least in the direction that this conversation went, without also touching on how we keep instrumentalizing church. We keep turning church into a tool of power. Like, there's no running away from that. And I think a lot of problems get in the way of that. That any gathered local community is just not a gathered local community reflective of body of Christ in that particular region. It's also a place where all sorts of other things are being worked out. You know, the ego of the pastor and all sorts of ideas. You know what I mean? The ego of the people and how they want to be perceived in community. Our moral thing. You know what I mean? So like then, and I think those things, me personally blame them on God, because I'm like, dude, you could have chosen other holier people to do this work. But you pick us. You know what I mean? Like, these stories of pastors just started churches because they were mad about the pastor of the church he was going in. For as long as I can stand and pastor that God has called me, we are good, you know. I have like stories of like these guys just literally left there at that church because they were not acquiescing or making room for his stupidity. So I'm like, why do I need to be stuck in this system? So you just go across the road and start
another church.
And gather just 10 people just get 10 people who would be my cheerleaders. You know what I mean? So like, there's not like, so even as we talk about all these ideals, like still the fact that this thing is God entrusting broken human people with all our capacity for corruption and sin and ego issues, which then still goes to Agi's question, which is, why then do we keep expecting perfection after this place? Why do we set ourselves as to be like our church, Jade Village? Oh no, just give us time. We'll be like the perfect church of Kenya. I'm like, no, we won't.
Let's say it now.
We expect perfection because we want to tell the best possible story, as opposed to telling a true story.
But what's the best? Why is the best possible story only the story? Well, first of all, the best story is the story that's impossible to live into. So we have to cook it and prop it and add things to it.
Well, that's what we mean by
working to have a good ending.
Yeah, but also
it has to have a good ending.
No, but also again, but just a bit of your question. Like that's why then that's what we mean when we say you work out your salvation with fear and trembling. You set the bar really, really high with a story that you can't even live into. So that every day you just trembling. Try to climb up the ladder. You know what I mean? You guys, we need to bring this episode
to an end. I think final thoughts not long thoughts, final thoughts on what has been helped. I mean, I guess all three of us. I know I go to church with him. You, all three of us still sort of show up to churches. What has been helpful for you to keep showing up in those spaces?
Those are supposed to be short thoughts.
Just short, just really, really short.
Are you sure this is not another podcast?
I'll go first. I think for me, one of the things that has been really helpful is that the idea that there's a place that is held open for me whenever there's need. Not that I ever stop, but that if I should come to a crisis, I don't know why everything is
Crisis.
in terms of,
In your world.
but that there's a place that I can go, and that space will be held long enough for me to meet Christ, or to meet. If I'm not meeting him in my house, or he's not here, or for whatever reason there's a disconnect, I think it's comforting to me to know that there's a place I can walk into, and hopefully, and whenever I do, the doors will be open, and they will hold that space long enough for me to come and encounter Christ again. That for me is a really beautiful understanding of what the church is and what the church can be. A place where, and as someone who works in a church, is that we show up, we keep doing this because we are holding this space long enough so that whoever, people can come and work out their salvation. We're just, all we do is create and hold spaces. As these members of this community are working out their salvation, they'll come and find a space where hopefully they will meet Christ. Again,
For all my attempts to leave,
you've been wanting to leave. Vic, you've been wanting to leave.
for all my attempts
But
to
you're
leave,
here.
I always find myself back, and it's always to do with the people.
Yeah.
The people have come to know, the people have come to, let me use the Christian word, to do life with.
We're always doing life with each other. Yeah.
Just that. Anyway, the people, there is a certain pool that the kind of community I've formed in the different spaces I have been in, just pulls me back to those spaces, because I've seen church at its best in my personal life, in the lives of very many people, because the church at its best shows up. And I think that could be just one of the most important jobs for a church. I've also seen the church at its worst. And in showing up to church is me learning to navigate that tension between the best of church and the worst of church. So I'm there trying to figure out how else can we do this for people. How else what kind of questions do we need to ask about church? How can we push the conversation forward? And all of that. So that intrigues me. That intrigues me in terms of the church can be different. The church can be reimagined. And we need to have that conversation. I don't know where. But
Here you are. Podcast.
So that's why I think all that is part of why I keep finding myself. Because we can't leave the broken system. If we want to name it as a broken system, we can't afford to leave it like that. So for people who are aware about things, people who have ideas about these things, people who have been on a journey, a certain kind of a journey, I don't know, we need a baraza. we need
to meet and talk.
We need to meet and talk and be vulnerable. We need to meet and talk and just see. We need to sit and talk and see. Can this be different from the way it has been? Because every person you hear was like, has an element of church has never been it for me. Especially when they get to a certain age. So for those people, like, then what can it be?
Yes. No, that's good. I mean, what is me? Mine is very clear. I'm in church because I was called.
The Father himself called you by name.
Who knows where I would be if he didn't call, This is the word, But very new says,
agreeing with both of you, I also think I want to add. I'm really big on the idea of how do we mature as a people, and I still think that church provides the best context for us to become better human beings. And by better, I mean like more Christ-like. That we embody an alternative way of living with generosity and kindness in a world marked with whatever it's marked with. You know? So I think to the degree that the church, that whatever what you've said, like when these doors are open and when people work out their salvation, both collectively in the Kwaruzanaing and all those different things, that they actually then show up back to their homes and parenting and workplaces as slightly better people than they were. I am of that's why I go to church, right? Yes, because then for a person like me who is also acquainted with so many people who have walked away from church, I am constantly hard pressed, and I have to be biased because I'm a pastor, right? But I'm constantly hard pressed to say that those people's lives became richer because they walked away from this particular community. So there's like still that idea of
like we need to explore that statement.
Like let's go richer because I stepped away from this. It's a particular understanding of what that looks like, right? But we get hurt in communities and then we walk away from communities hoping that there's some other ideal place where we get our pass from doing the hard work that comes from maturing through the hard work that comes from being in a community, you know, where there's accountability and this kind of things, right? And also, I think then the thing that someone would ask that is like, well, I still also take it seriously that Jesus says that wherever two or three are gathered, there I am in there. Wherever two or three are gathered in my name, there I am in their midst. As my way of saying that I take seriously that there's a mystical Christ presence every time we gather in His name, through the 1 hour, through our small groups, or whatever, and that our gatheredness makes room for that presence to find its way into our hearts. You know, so which is my way of saying, you can be in all sorts of communities, but as long as those communities are not gathered in the name of Christ, then something is missing. There is. Like, it's not just like if we did life together, the three of us, we would automatically mature into more whole human beings. You know, there's an empowering that happens in a supernatural sort of way. So I think those two things are amongst many other things I could go into. But for now, primarily those two things. There's a growth that will not going to happen unless we are in a particular community. And then there is a growth that is never going to happen absence of that energizing, sustaining life force of Christ. That's why I do church. At which point I say, you're welcome to join the village church.
In
we are a perfect church where we do life together and you're vulnerable with one another.
So,
to conclude, Vic is going to give us the blessing of the day.
So, dear friends, here is our benediction for this week about church. We try to end these episodes just leaving you with a blessing, a prayer for you, whatever time you listen or watch this. For all our thoughts we have about church and its failings and its successes, may you at your very deepest levels find community. May you find spaces, wherever they may be, that you find blessings, spaces that will give you life and not drain you. May you find the courage to redefine and reimagine church to whatever will give you and everyone around you dignity, peace, love, and be reminded of your humanness. And may you find the strength to participate in those places that will continue to name people, affirm people, and show up for people. Grace and peace.
Amen.
But even that reading is particularly conditioned reading. Because like I said, literally, if we took that seriously, let us read the Bible. I can't know, it might blow our mind. But the point is, we don't read the Bible, we read it with all these presuppositions already. You know what I mean?